If you find horror movies so cliche that they don't scare you anymore, this video is for you. Sit back and enjoy those options, not for the faint-hearted. Top 10 Best Horror Movies on Netflix 2023. Number 10, The Boy. As an important member of the list of creepy dolls along with its supernatural horror film, it makes a terrifying entrance, The Boy. I was confused at first, but I can assure you that it doesn't seem as bad as the dark secret it hides. And the former star of The Walking Dead, Lauren Cohen, has my back, as she was the protagonist of this dangerous story and gave such a convincing performance that I totally fell for it. So, the story is about a young woman who accepts a job as a babysitter for a life-size doll that she must take care of as if it was a boy. If I were her, I'd quit. I still don't get why she didn't. Anyway, she'll experience a series of disturbing events that raised my worst fears and will awaken yours. Directed by William Brent Bell, this film shows many truly tense, dark, stormy moments, and the plot twist makes it go from a psychological horror film linked with the afterlife to an intense thriller. You'll see that everything will make sense. Number 9, Creep. I'm convinced that Patrick Brice and Mark Duplass made the most of their acting potential to create a jewel of horror. Play it and you'll see. Starring only these two actors, because the third character only lent his voice.
You need to get out of that house right now.
This feature film is so effective it managed to scare me and make me feel extremely uncomfortable during its 77 minutes of length. I couldn't sleep at night. It's so good that you would never guess it was a low-budget movie, would you? It was directed by the great Brice, who also wrote the script and recorded most of the scenes. How well-rounded. You can't be distracted for a second as the psychological horror plot unfolds. Its unexpected scenes and supernatural tension made me jump out of my seat. You've been warned. Number 8, Hush. Oh yeah. I love the idea of changing the noise of the city for the quiet of a house in the countryside. Excellent plan, right? Unless that wonderful idea is part of the plot of a scary horror movie. That's where the whole story changes. Even worse if there are other compounding factors, such as the protagonist who is a deaf-mute writer seeking to live a solitary life in the middle of the forest. How risky. Because that's where she must fight for her life in silence. Literally. It seems that the protagonist, Kate Siegel, will have everything against her, except the critics' approval and mine for her excellent performance. I even thought she was actually deaf-mute. You've gotta see it. Mainly because you'll notice how genius the director Mike Flanagan was at creating a story with only 15 minutes of dialogue and 70 minutes of scenes without a single word. Ingeniously terrifying. Number 7, Cam. Its plot is an absolute nightmare. After watching this film, I still don't know whether to keep my social networks on because if you're a fan of the intriguing episodes of Black Mirror as I am, this film will also make you think whether using technology is a good idea. Directed by Daniel Goldhaber, you'll see how this psychological horror film eerily materializes the threats of inhabiting a virtual world. This fictional story is quite close to reality and shows us the consequences a young woman will experience for streaming sexy live shows. The exhibition is very scary, and you run the risk of evil taking over your account, identity, and even your own physical traits. I'm not exaggerating. Indeed, due to its mega-realistic plot, the experts have described it as a deep, clever, scathing, and absolutely disturbing film. Totally agree. Number 6, Eli. The unexpected twist in this movie blew me away. You shouldn't miss it. This feature film, directed by Kieran Foy, tells the story of a boy who suffers from a rare, weakening disease. His only hope is a medical center where he has to undergo a complicated experimental treatment. I felt the pain just by looking at it. If you believe that's where the supernatural events begin, you're right. But there's more, because as the miner undergoes the intense procedure, a frightening truth is about to be revealed. The images are shocking. But if you're brave enough, this Netflix movie promises to give you the heebie-jeebies in its 98-minute length, where you'll enjoy a strong cast including the star of Stranger Things, Sadie Sink, and the great little protagonist, Charlie Shotwell, who, at his young age, managed to convey the terror, rage, and vulnerability to me in the different scenes of the film. Would you dare to watch it alone? Number 5, Veronica. As truth is always stranger than fiction, the Spanish director Paco Plaza used all his means and got me with Veronica. This film is set in 1991's Madrid and is starring Sandra Escacena. It shows us a fatherless 15-year-old girl who performs a seance to communicate with him. The beginning is disturbing, and each scene becomes more difficult to watch than the last, especially those with creepy, possessed nuns, terrifying shadows, and sinister creaks. It scared me so much that I barely made it to the end, mainly because it's based on a true story. You can Google it. The film was inspired by Estefania Gutierrez Lazaro, who died in 1991 of hallucinations and seizures after performing a seance at her school. The strange thing is that the doctors couldn't find anything wrong with the minor's health, and her relatives stated that after her death, the torment continued. Chilling. Number 4. Old People. Without much mystery behind its title, this German horror film tells the story of a woman who returns to her hometown, but suddenly finds herself forced to defend her life from the attacks of older people willing to kill her and cause merciless destruction. I didn't expect so much when I saw it, but this film contains non-stop action and a fast-paced style that works extremely well, but only if you have nerves of steel, because you'll find violent scenes in its 90-minute length. You'll change your beautiful perception of the elderly for a moment, there's no doubt. So if you're afraid of seeing a lot of blood, I don't recommend it. Otherwise, this film will give you a totally deep message, and I'm sure that the German director Andy Fetcher will convince you. Like me. Number 3. Creep 2. After the success and genius of Patrick Brice in his first film, the director comes with the second part to make Creep one of the best modern horror sequels. This film takes the insane protagonist, we're still talking about Brice, to pretend to be his latest victim and draw a filmmaker to come to a place quite far away with the promise of money and a good story to record. But after getting to the place, the woman quickly realizes that she's made a mistake. Can you imagine being in that situation? How would you escape? If you could, of course. Without a doubt, this film is a big success thanks to the disturbing personality of the main character. Charmingly self-critical one moment and afflicted with neurosis the next. Too troublesome and not predictable at all. I didn't know what to expect from the next scene. No wonder it was critically acclaimed thanks to the script, atmosphere, black humor, and performance. Number 2. Under the Shadow. This really met all my expectations as a horror lover. Under the Shadow was written and directed by Iranian Baba Kanvari in his directorial debut. Set in a time and a city where horror movies rarely take place, the story occurs in 1988 in Tehran, during the height of the Iran-Iraq War. A time that, in addition to being conflictive, was quite confusing. So, after experiencing adverse situations, a mother is convinced that she's being persecuted by evil spirits and has no choice but to face these supernatural forces. Don't be fooled though, the plot isn't as simple as it seems. The film is steeped in symbolism and develops topics on female oppression, motherhood, anxiety, and the trauma of war during its 84 minutes of length. This is a complete, true horror story, especially because the protagonists Narges Rashidi and Avin Manshadi managed to get such a perfect connection to the tension and impatience they transmit are terrifying. Are you ready to know what movie made me experience true terror? Number 1. His House. Starring Wunmi Mosaku and Shope Durisu, these British actors play a refugee couple from South Sudan trying to adapt to their new life in an English city, but are tormented by an inexplicable sinister force that poses many mysteries and interpretations. The secret of this story is in the depth of its plot. Let me tell you, this psychological horror film fuses supernatural events, something that never fails, with a powerful plot about the pain and guilt felt by an immigrant in a country that rejects him. Without a doubt, inhumanity has become a true horror story. No one could deny it. Directed and scripted by Remy Weeks, this feature film brings you 93 minutes of intense scenes that are incredibly scary and compassionate at the same time. This combination seems to be the secret formula, as the director won the British Independent Film Award for Best Director and the British Academy Film Award for Outstanding Debut by a British writer, director, or producer. What a start! Now, your time has come. Choose your best partner and let your night of terror begin. If you enjoyed this content, like the video, subscribe, and ring the bell. You still have more to see, just click here, here, or here.